Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my crazy workplace tales. It was a typical Monday morning at the office, the kind where the coffee machine hums and keyboards clack in a steady rhythm. I was settling into my desk, ready to tackle a mountain of emails, when my secretary, Lisa, knocked on my door. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. Worry, maybe? She closed the door behind her, which was unusual, and leaned in close. "Boss, I overheard something you need to know," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. My stomach tightened. Lisa wasn't one for drama, so this had to be serious. She glanced over her shoulder, as if someone might be eavesdropping even now. "It's about Sarah from marketing," she continued, her words careful but urgent. I raised an eyebrow. Sarah was known for her charm, always smiling, always networking. What could she have done? Lisa took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I caught her gossiping about you in the break room." My heart skipped a beat. Gossip wasn't new, but this felt different. "What did she say?" I asked, leaning forward. Lisa hesitated, then spilled the beans. Sarah was spreading a rumor that I was on the verge of being fired. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I sat back, trying to process what Lisa had just told me. Fired? Me? I'd been with the company for 7 years, climbing the ranks, hitting every target. The idea was absurd, but the sting of betrayal was real. Sarah and I weren't close, but we'd always been professional, exchanging polite nods in meetings. Why would she spread something so vicious? Lisa fidgeted, clearly uncomfortable relaying the news. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," she said, "but they were loud, and your name came up." She explained how she'd gone to grab a coffee and overheard Sarah with a group of colleagues. They were huddled by the vending machine, whispering but not quietly enough. Sarah's voice had carried, confident and sharp, as she painted a picture of my supposed downfall. "She said the higher-ups were done with you," Lisa recounted, her brow furrowed. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief bubbling up. Who else had heard this? Was it spreading? I thanked Lisa for her honesty and asked her to keep this between us. She nodded, promising discretion, but I could see the worry in her eyes. After Lisa left, I sat staring at my computer screen, the words of an email blurring before me. My mind was racing. Why would Sarah do this? Was it jealousy, a power play, or something else entirely? I'd always prided myself on being fair, approachable, a team player. But clearly, someone didn't see it that way. I tried to focus on work, but the rumor gnawed at me. What if others believed it? What if it reached my boss, Karen? I decided I couldn't just sit there. I needed to know more about what was being said and why. I grabbed my coffee mug as an excuse and headed to the break room. The office was buzzing as usual, but I felt like every glance was loaded. Was that a smirk from Tom in accounting? Did Emily from HR look away too quickly? I shook it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. The break room was empty when I got there, but the air felt heavy, like it held secrets. I poured a coffee, my ears straining for any hint of gossip. Nothing. Just the hum of the fridge. Back at my desk, I couldn't shake the unease. I decided to do some subtle digging. I messaged a few trusted colleagues, casually asking if they'd heard anything interesting lately. Most replied with vague pleasantries, but one, Mike from sales, hinted at something. "Heard some chatter, but it's probably nothing," he typed. I pressed him, keeping it light, and he admitted he'd overheard Sarah talking about changes in leadership. My blood ran cold. So it wasn't just a one-off comment. Sarah was actively spreading this. I thanked Mike and closed the chat, my mind spinning. Was this a coordinated effort? Did Sarah have allies? I knew I had to confront this, but how? Confronting her directly might backfire, making me look defensive. I needed a plan, something strategic. I glanced at Lisa's desk through my office window. She was typing, oblivious to the storm brewing in my head. I trusted her, but I needed more than her word to act. That afternoon, I had a meeting with Karen, my boss. It was a routine check-in, but now it felt like walking into a lion's den. I studied her face for any sign she'd heard the rumor. She was her usual self, brisk, professional, maybe a little distracted. We discussed quarterly goals, but my mind kept drifting to Sarah's words. Should I bring it up? I decided against it. Raising the issue without proof could make me seem insecure. Instead, I doubled down on my performance, presenting my team's latest wins with extra polish. Karen nodded approvingly, but I couldn't shake the feeling she was watching me closely. As I left her office, I caught a glimpse of Sarah across the floor, laughing with a colleague. My jaw clenched. Was she laughing about me? I knew I was spiraling, but the betrayal stung. I needed to get ahead of this before it spread further. Back at my desk, I started brainstorming ways to uncover the truth without tipping my hand. By the next day, I was on a mission. I asked Lisa to keep her ears open, discreetly, for any more talk about me. She agreed, though I could tell she was nervous about playing spy. I also reached out to IT, asking for a routine check on office communication channels. I didn't expect much, but if Sarah was bold enough to gossip in person, maybe she'd slipped up in an email or chat. Meanwhile, I kept my routine normal, smiling at colleagues, joining in on small talk. But every interaction felt like a chess move. I noticed Sarah was avoiding me, her usual friendly nods replaced by quick glances away. Was she guilty, or was I reading too much into it? That evening, Lisa slipped into my office with an update. She'd overheard another conversation, this time in the hallway. Sarah wasn't just spreading rumors, she was implying she had inside info from management. My heart sank. This was bigger than I thought. The IT check turned up nothing, no smoking gun in emails or chats. I wasn't surprised. Sarah was too smart to leave a paper trail. But her boldness was unnerving. Who was feeding her this inside info? Or was she making it all up? I decided to test the waters. At the next team meeting, I volunteered to lead a high-profile project, something visible to the whole company. If Sarah thought I was on my way out, this would force her hand. Sure enough, she hesitated when I spoke up, her smile tight. After the meeting, I overheard her muttering to a colleague about wasted efforts. I pretended not to notice, but it fueled my resolve. I started documenting everything, every comment Lisa overheard, every odd look, every vague reply from colleagues. If this was a game, I wasn't going to lose. But I also knew I had to be careful. One wrong move, and I'd look like the paranoid one. Over the next few days, the office felt like a pressure cooker. The rumor had spread. I could tell by the way conversations hushed when I walked by. I kept my head high, focusing on work, but the whispers were eating at me. Lisa was my lifeline, feeding me bits of intel. She confirmed Sarah was the source, but others were now repeating the story. Some even embellished it, saying I'd botched a major deal. That was a lie. I'd closed every deal this quarter. I decided it was time to talk to HR. I met with Emily, keeping it vague but firm. I've heard some concerning rumors about my performance, I said. Emily's face was neutral, but she promised to look into it. I left her office feeling uneasy. HR was supposed to be impartial, but what if Sarah had gotten to them too? I needed an ally higher up. I scheduled a coffee with Karen, hoping to gauge her stance without revealing too much. My coffee with Karen was a calculated risk. I kept the conversation light, focusing on work and industry trends. But halfway through, I dropped a hint, heard some wild rumors floating around the office lately. Karen raised an eyebrow but didn't bite. People always talk, she said, sipping her latte. Her nonchalance was reassuring, but it didn't rule out the possibility she'd heard something. I left the meeting with no clear answers, but I felt a bit steadier. Karen wasn't acting like someone planning to fire me. Back at the office, Lisa had more news. Sarah had been seen meeting with a senior manager, Tom, behind closed doors. My mind raced. Was Tom the source of her inside info? I didn't trust him. He'd always been a bit too ambitious, eyeing my role. I decided to keep a closer eye on both of them, but I needed proof before making any moves. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rumor, Sarah, Tom, it was all swirling in my head. I started wondering if this was personal. Had I slighted Sarah somehow? Or was this about something bigger, like office politics or a power grab? The next morning, I arrived early, determined to take control. I asked Lisa to pull some old project files Sarah had worked on. Maybe there was a clue in her work, a mistake she was trying to deflect onto me. As I sifted through the files, I noticed something odd. A report Sarah had submitted last quarter had inflated numbers. It wasn't glaring, but it was enough to raise questions. Could this be why she was targeting me? Was she covering her tracks? I flagged the report and sent it to a trusted colleague for a second opinion. If I was right, this could turn the tables. But I had to be sure before acting. The next week was a blur of meetings and deadlines, but I kept my investigation quiet. My colleague confirmed the discrepancies in Sarah's report. Nothing criminal, but sloppy enough to question her credibility. I felt a spark of hope. This could be my leverage. I decided to confront Sarah, but not head-on. Instead, I invited her to a collaborative meeting about the upcoming project. She seemed surprised but agreed. In the meeting, I casually brought up the report, asking for clarification on her numbers. Her face froze for a split second before she recovered with a smooth explanation. But I saw it, the crack in her confidence. I didn't push further, just nodded and moved on. I wanted her to know I was watching. After the meeting, Lisa told me Sarah had been unusually quiet, avoiding the break room. Was she rattled? I hoped so. I needed her to slip up. Meanwhile, the rumor was still spreading, though it had morphed. Now people were saying I was in trouble with the board. It was maddening. Every whispered conversation felt like a knife twist. I kept up appearances, delivering on projects and charming clients, but the stress was wearing me down. Lisa was a rock, slipping me updates without drawing attention. She'd overheard Tom praising Sarah in a meeting, which set off alarm bells. Were they working together? I decided to dig into Tom's recent moves. A quick chat with a friend in finance revealed he'd been pushing for a restructuring. My department was on the chopping block. Suddenly, it clicked. Sarah's gossip wasn't just personal, it was strategic. She and Tom were positioning themselves for a shakeup, and I was the scapegoat. I needed to act fast. I spent the weekend strategizing. Confronting Tom or Sarah directly was too risky without hard evidence. Instead, I focused on building my case. I compiled a dossier, Lisa's notes, the questionable report, and screenshots of vague emails between Sarah and Tom. It wasn't airtight, but it was enough to take to HR. This time, I met with Emily's boss, Mark, to ensure impartiality. I laid out my concerns calmly, framing it as a cultural issue affecting team morale. Mark listened intently, jotting notes. "This is serious," he said, promising a discreet investigation. I felt a weight lift, but I wasn't naive. HR could be slow, and Sarah was slippery. I needed to keep the pressure on. Back at my desk, I noticed Sarah watching me from across the room. Our eyes met, and she looked away. Game on. The next day, something shifted. Colleagues who'd been distant started approaching me again, asking about projects, cracking jokes. Had the rumor lost steam? Lisa confirmed it. The office grapevine was buzzing with a new story about Sarah. Someone had leaked that she'd fudged her report. I didn't know who, but I suspected my colleague who'd reviewed it. Sarah's polished facade was cracking, and people were noticing. She was still smiling, but it was forced, her usual charm strained. I kept my distance, letting the tide turn naturally. Meanwhile, I got a call from Mark. HR had found concerning patterns in Sarah's behavior, including unprofessional conduct. They couldn't share details, but she was being monitored. I allowed myself a small smile. Things were moving in my favor. But I wasn't done yet. By midweek, the office dynamic had changed. Sarah was quieter, less visible, and Tom was suddenly too busy to attend team meetings. I kept working, delivering a killer presentation that earned praise from Karen. She even pulled me aside to say, "You're doing great work, don't let the noise distract you." It was the first time she'd acknowledged the rumors, and it felt like a lifeline. I thanked her, keeping my cool, but inside I was elated. The tide was turning, but I couldn't get complacent. I asked Lisa to keep tabs on Sarah's interactions, especially with Tom. She reported they'd stopped meeting behind closed doors, and Sarah was sticking to her desk. Was she backing off, or planning something new? I couldn't tell, but I wasn't taking chances. I doubled down on my projects, making sure every move was flawless. Then came the bombshell. Late Thursday, Mark called me into his office. He looked grim but not at me. With relief, I realized. "We've concluded our investigation," he said. Sarah had been caught fabricating data in multiple reports, not just the one I'd flagged. Worse, she'd been leaking confidential meeting notes to undermine colleagues, including me. The gossip was her attempt to deflect attention from her own mistakes. My jaw dropped. This was bigger than I'd imagined. Mark said Sarah was being let go, effective immediately. Tom, while not directly implicated, was on thin ice for enabling her. I thanked Mark, trying to hide my shock. As I left his office, I saw Sarah clearing her desk, her face pale. Colleagues whispered, but no one approached her. The office was stunned, and I was at the center of it all. The next day, Sarah was gone. Her desk sat empty, a stark reminder of the chaos she'd caused. The rumor mill churned, but now it was about her downfall, not mine. Colleagues came to me, apologizing for believing the gossip. I waved it off, playing the gracious leader, but inside I felt vindicated. Lisa was beaming, proud of her role in uncovering the truth. I gave her a quiet thank you, promising a bonus for her loyalty. Karen called me into her office to discuss the fallout. "You handled this well," she said, her tone warm. She hinted at a promotion, saying my leadership had shown through. I left her office on cloud 9. The office felt lighter, like a storm had passed. But I knew better than to let my guard down. Office politics never truly die. Over the next week, things settled. The rumors about me faded, replaced by chatter about Sarah's exit. I focused on rebuilding trust with my team, hosting a lunch to clear the air. Everyone was relieved, eager to move on. I noticed Tom keeping a low profile, his usual swagger gone. Had he learned his lesson? I wasn't sure, but I'd be watching him. Meanwhile, I got an email from Mark, confirming Sarah's termination was final and that HR was implementing new policies to prevent gossip. It felt like a win, but I knew it was only half the battle. I'd exposed Sarah, but the underlying culture that let her thrive needed work. I started brainstorming ways to foster transparency, maybe a team-building retreat. The office needed healing, and I wanted to lead it. As the weeks passed, I felt more secure in my role. Karen officially offered me the promotion, a step up to director. I accepted, knowing it came with bigger challenges but also more influence. I used my new role to push for open communication, setting up anonymous feedback channels. Colleagues responded well, and the office vibe improved. Lisa got her bonus and a glowing review. She'd earned it. I even patched things up with a few colleagues who'd been swayed by Sarah's lies. They admitted they'd been wrong, and I let it go. Holding grudges wouldn't help. But I kept my dossier on Sarah and Tom, just in case. You never know when old enemies might resurface. For now, though, I was on top, and it felt good. Looking back, the whole ordeal was a wake-up call. I'd been too trusting, assuming hard work would shield me from politics. Sarah's gossip showed me how fragile reputation can be. But it also taught me resilience. I'd faced betrayal, navigated a minefield, and come out stronger. The office wasn't perfect, but it was better. My team respected me, Karen trusted me, and I had Lisa's loyalty. I'd learned to keep my eyes open and my allies close. As I sat at my new desk, overlooking the office floor, I felt a mix of pride and caution. This was my domain now, but I'd never forget how quickly things could shift. The next challenge was always around the corner, and I'd be ready. The promotion brought new responsibilities, but I was ready to tackle them head-on. My first move was to streamline our team's workflow, cutting out inefficiencies Sarah had left behind. Her sloppy reports had caused delays, and I wasn't about to let that continue. I brought in a consultant to audit our processes, and the team responded well to the changes. Even Tom seemed to fall in line, though I still didn't trust him fully. His meetings with Sarah had left a bad taste, and I kept him at arm's length. Meanwhile, Lisa became my right hand, handling sensitive tasks with discretion. Her loyalty through the gossip saga had cemented her as my ally. I started mentoring her, hoping she'd climb the ranks too. The office was humming with productivity, and I felt like I was finally in control. But not everything was smooth sailing. A few weeks after Sarah's exit, I heard whispers of a new rumor, not about me, but about the company. Word was, a merger was in the works, and layoffs might follow. I didn't know if it was true, but it reminded me how fast gossip spreads. I decided to address it head-on in our next team meeting. Let's focus on facts, not rumors, I said, encouraging open questions. The team appreciated the transparency, and the whispers died down. I also met with Karen to get the real story. She confirmed the merger talks but assured me our department was safe, for now. I relayed that to the team, keeping their trust. It felt good to be the one quashing rumors instead of fueling them. Still, I kept my ear to the ground, ready for any surprises. As the merger talks heated up, I noticed a shift in Tom. He was back to his old self, schmoozing with senior management. I wondered if he was trying to distance himself from Sarah's scandal. Or was he up to something new? I asked Lisa to keep tabs on him, discreetly. She reported he was pitching big ideas to Karen, trying to take credit for our department's recent wins. I wasn't surprised. Tom was always an opportunist. I decided to counter by showcasing my team's work in a company-wide newsletter. The praise poured in, and Tom's spotlight dimmed. It was a small victory, but it reminded me to stay vigilant. Office politics were like a chess game, and I was learning to play a few moves ahead. By the end of the quarter, the merger was finalized, and our department emerged stronger. Karen credited my leadership, which felt like a hard-earned win. I threw a team party to celebrate, and the mood was electric. Even Tom showed up, though he left early. I didn't care. He wasn't my focus anymore. My team was thriving, and I was building a reputation as a leader who could weather storms. Lisa pulled me aside during the party, grinning. "You turned it all around," she said. I smiled but didn't let it go to my head. Sarah's betrayal had taught me humility. I thanked the team in a heartfelt speech, emphasizing unity. The applause was genuine, and for the first time in months, I felt at peace. Looking ahead, I knew the office would always have its dramas. But I wasn't the same person who'd walked into that storm months ago. I was sharper, stronger, more strategic. Sarah's gossip had been a wake-up call, but it had also been a gift. It showed me who I could trust, what I was capable of, and how to lead through chaos. I kept my eyes open, my allies close, and my work impeccable. The office was my stage now, and I was ready for whatever came next. Whether it was a new rumor, a new rival, or a new opportunity, I'd face it head-on. That's what leaders do. And I was a leader now, in every sense of the word. Thanks for sticking with this wild ride. If you loved this story, please subscribe and hit the bell for more crazy workplace tales. Your support means the world.